Okay, so this is the bipolar disorder and depressive disorder PowerPoint. The pages in the textbook can be found on page 579 and 589. As of the DSM-5, these are now two classifications in its own instead of classified and chunked under the mood disorder as it was in DSM-4, so keep that in mind. So what we will review in this presentation is the different depressive disorders. We will talk about what bipolar disorder is. We will talk about how these can be impacted by the biological and social cognitive impact. Okay, so the two disorders, which are usually characterized by symptoms of extreme moods, they're often caused by imbalances in neurotransmitters such as serotonin, and they're worsened by environmental factors such as maybe the loss of a job or the loss of a husband. Society's view, depression has often been called the common cold of psychological disorders. It affects almost 13% of Americans. Major depression occurs when at least 5 signs of depression last 2 or more weeks. So we'll talk about the different signs in a minute. Phobias are more common. However, depression is the number one reason people actually seek medical treatment. Worldwide, 9.5% of women are diagnosed with major depression, and 5.8% of males are diagnosed. So the two principal forms we will talk about is depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. First one is major depressive disorder or depressive disorder. It is normal to become depressed after a sad or unfortunate event, but if a person remains depressed weeks or months after the event, it can be classified as major depression. 5 or more of the following symptoms are found in these categories for over a 2-week period. You have a depressed mood, a really sad mood, a diminished interest in activities that used to be your favorites. Your weight is changing, you're either gaining or you're losing it without dieting. Your sleeping pattern changes. Maybe you're sleeping all the time or you're not sleeping at all. You're physically feeling slow or fatigued. You're feeling worthless. You're unable to concentrate. Okay. And your thoughts of death or suicide. If these are going on for more than 2 weeks, and the more severe it gets, it can increase the chances of depression. You need professional treatment, and episodes of major depression often end, but episodes can. The next category we'll talk about is bipolar disorder, formerly known as manic depressive disorder. Bipolar is a mentally abnormality involving swings of moods from mania, which are really high states, to depressed. Depressing symptoms are gloomy, withdrawn, tired, or motionless, and manic symptoms are desire for action, multiple ideas, you're excited, you're not sleeping. And somebody who had bipolar was Ernest Hemingway. Additional information on mania. Mania is from the Greek word mad excitement. It's hyperactive, over-optimistic state. It's characterized by rapid speech, the flight of ideas. The thoughts are way too fast. You're restless, and you're unable to concentrate. The neurotransmitter serotonin, norepinephrine, you're too much is absorbed, so it's too much is released. It's going to be known as norepinephrine. Serotonin, you could have too high levels of serotonin. Too little in either of these, and it's going to be cause for depression. Bipolar disorder, here's kind of the difference between where you have manic stages to depressed states. We already talked about the manic states, the feeling of high, energized, jumpy, impulsive, less sleep, delusions, you start seeing things and taking on too many new activities. And then the depressed phase, the slowed thoughts, loss of interest activities, difficulty concentrating, changes in sleeping patterns, changes in eating habits, thoughts of death or suicide. Bipolar, it alternates between periods of mania and depression. The periods can last for days, weeks, or even years before alternating to the other extremes. These periods seem to alternate faster in teens and young adults. Mild form of bipolar disorder is called climactic. Seasonal affective disorder is something I want to talk about. It's not in the text. It is usually under the depressive category. It is during winter months when the sun is not out. Some people go into what is known as seasonal affective disorder, where a lot of times they're very depressed during the dark months. They're inactive. Okay, they're in blue moods. If, remember, they have signs of deviant distress or dysfunction, they could be categorized as having a seasonal affective disorder. Dysthymic disorder is another one that's not in the text. It's under the depressive category. It's mild depression characterized by lack of energy, loss of sense of humor, general unhappiness, and low feeling of self-worth. So this is a little less severe as major depression. Fairly common, about 10% of the population each year experiences this. It can be helped with therapy, but not always necessary. Okay, so understanding these mood disorders, or what we know today is the depressive disorders and bipolar disorders, many behavioral and cognitive changes accompany depression. So your actions, behaviors are going to change, okay, and your thought process is also going to begin to change. You're going to see yourself as less worth, okay, if you're really depressed. Depression is widespread, and then the causes are often seen as common. Okay, it is found throughout the world, all right, and they can see these, so the causes of what really causes depression are very similar. Women they see are twice as vulnerable to be depressed. They found that women, in terms of how we study emotion, are more vulnerable to being diagnosed. Most depressive periods end on their own, so people eventually get over the depressive state and bounce back to themselves. However, they can relapse in depressive periods. Stressful events precede depression, so oftentimes stressful events lead up to what causes you to go through depression. And depression is strikingly occurring in earlier and earlier time periods of people's lives. Okay, so here's a non-depressed state, very active on the right, and the depressed state is very inactive, specifically in certain areas on the left. Social cognitive explanations, the social, so your environment and your thought process, self-defeating beliefs, and a negative explanatory style feed depressive vicious cycles. So when you feel like you're self-defeated and you feel like you can't be anything and you continuously think about that, that's going to increase your attitude for having depression. Women have a stronger emotional memory that leads to overthinking things, which can lead them to have a more situation where they find themselves in depression. Those who suffer from depression explain bad events in terms of their personality and believe it will last forever and affect every part of their life. They are the reasons it happened. They have a bad organizational system, or they are the people that cause the events to happen. And also we've talked about learned helplessness. They learn to be helpless and they learn to kind of be defeated. Mark Seligman, we talked about before. Depression is more common in Western cultures. He believes because we have a rise of individualism, we need to do everything ourselves, or we need to, number one is the most important person. And we have a decline of commitment to religion and family, he believes. Young people take personal responsibility for failure and rejection, and they used to take it as the community. He also believes in the vicious cycle. So we have a stressful experience. We get fired from a job. There's a negative explanation style in which we approach that. I was the reason why I got fired. I was the one, you blame yourself. Then you go into the depressive mode, and then your thought process may change, meaning that you're going to just now give up on life and you're not necessarily going to go out and try and find another job. So to recap, we talked about some statistics of the disorders. We talked about major and bipolar disorder. We talked about the biological impact and the social cognitive impact.